Our guest today is Professor Lawrence White, who has been with New York University Search School of Business for more than 35 years and is the holder of the Robert Kavesh Professorship in Economics. His primary research areas of interest include financial regulation, antitrust, network industries, international banking, and applied microeconomics. Professor White has published in numerous journals, including the Journal of Business, Journal of Economic Perspectives, and Journal of Economic Literature. Professor White received his BA from Harvard University, MSc from the London School of Economics, and PhD from Harvard University. On behalf of UptoUs NYU, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to this interview.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
So, we'd like to just begin by learning a little bit more about you as a person and as someone with academic interests. So, could you just describe to us a little bit more about why you originally became interested in economics or finance, or if you became interested in something different?
Well, funny you should ask. First became interested in economics while I was in high school, my senior year of high school, Beverly Hills High School, 90210. I was born in Brooklyn, didn't move out to Southern California until I was not quite 5 years old. I had the opportunity to go to UCLA for 2 classes in the fall semester, 2 classes in the spring. I asked my older brother, who eventually became a lawyer, what should I take? My memory is without hesitation. He said, a year of economics, a year of political science. And since I idolized my older brother, of course that's what I did. I did well and liked both of them, but the economics resonated with me. I attended Harvard as an undergraduate. I got there as a freshman. I wasn't quite sure, should I major in economics or should I major in chemistry? Because I had this wonderful junior year in high school chemistry course, full year with a wonderful instructor. And I took a year of introductory biochemistry with George Wald, a Nobel Prize winner, but also took a upper level economics class with John Kenneth Galbraith. And by the time my freshman year was finished, I knew I wanted to major in economics. But I thought I was going to be a lawyer. And all the way through my undergraduate training, I thought I was going to become a lawyer, only took the LSATs in my senior year. And it was only the spring of my senior year when I started having second thoughts. I went to the London School of Economics for a 1-year master's degree, and while I was there, I decided economics, not law, was what I wanted to do. I came back to the United States, got a PhD from Harvard, spent a year and a half abroad working in Pakistan and Indonesia, then came back, spent 6 years teaching at Princeton, moved on to the NYU Business School, where you find me today.
Why should our generation be interested in the deficit, and why is it important to the everyday American college-age student?
Well, I think it's important to everyone. Basically, we have a long-term, unsustainable debt problem, which of course gets built up from deficits. Because we've made, over the long term, a set of promises as a society to various parts of our society, mostly older Americans, through Social Security, through Medicare, also Medicaid, which is not so much older, but more generally low-income households. And it's going to be very difficult for us as a society to make good on those promises, make good on those obligations. So we've promised more than we can deliver under current circumstances. And so we've got a set of choices. Do we renege completely on the promises? Do we modify the promises? Do we raise more revenue so that we can deliver on those promises? Do we cut back on other levels of government expenditure so that we can devote more of our tax revenues to fulfilling those promises? Do we inflate our way out of the current inability to make good on those promises? Do we just let things drift, and at some point our deficit borrowing is going to blow up on us because the credit markets are going to say, we don't want to lend to you anymore? That hasn't happened yet. That isn't happening under the current circumstances. But we can't go on forever with the current circumstances. Every citizen ought to be concerned about this. College-age individuals ought to be concerned because they're going to be moving into a working life environment where one of those things has to happen. For the next few years, we may not face a crisis, but beyond that, something has to happen, and that something could well affect working age adults in just a few years.
Very interesting. That's actually a perfect segue into the next question, which is, if the deficit isn't reduced now, or if deficit spending continues, what sort of changes institutionally, what sort of promises can we see to be done away with in the coming years if we don't address the issue?
Well, if we need to have a long-run plan. It doesn't mean we need to this year or next year deal with the immediate deficit, because we have a weak economy, and weak economies, I'm a basic believer that deficit spending and easy monetary policies are the right ways to be dealing with weak economies. But over the longer run, we've got to deal with these obligations. Beyond a few years, we may not have the luxury of a lot of choice, because the financial markets may start saying, hey, we're not willing to lend to you anymore. At that point, our interest costs on our borrowing start to rise substantially. It's the same sort of situation we've seen in some European countries, like Greece, like Spain, where the financial markets start getting nervous about the ability of the country to repay its obligations, and they start saying, we're not prepared to lend anymore, or we require very high interest rates in order to lend, and that becomes then, that adds to the burden, that adds to the deficit, and you can get a spiral of that you can't get out of. So if we do nothing, eventually we land there. Otherwise, we have to make some choices, renege on the promises, modify the promises, do something on the revenue side, do something about other spending. Something's got to give.
A lot of political figures have suggested the idea of possibly adjusting government pension budgets or even Social Security budgets to address the current debt as a remedy. And there seem to be some serious ethical and moral dilemmas involved in this strategy. What's your take on that?
I think there are, and I think one piece of the story at the federal level has to be modifying the Social Security promises, but you don't want to do that for somebody who, say, is already 55 years old and is only 10 or so years away from retirement, to be suddenly saying to that person, oh, sorry, you thought you were going to be able to draw a Social Security payment of this big when you turn 66 or 67. No, it's only going to be this big, and oh, by the way, you're going to have to wait till you're 69 or 70. I think that's just morally wrong, that's ethically wrong, that's just wrong. What is appropriate is to be saying to a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old, who is 30 or 35 years away from the expectation of drawing a Social Security payment. Look, we've got to modify things, and your payment, you ought to now know and be thinking about it, and adjusting your spending and your saving behavior, because when you turn in your late 60s, first, it isn't going to happen at 67, it's going to happen at 70, and your payment, rather than being this size, is only going to be this size. Make the appropriate adjustments now. You've got 35 or 40 years to do it. That seems to me the appropriate way to deal with the problem, and it is the long run promises that are the ones that are not sustainable. So it's making those adjustments, making smaller adjustments for somebody who is in his or her 30s, maybe even very small adjustments for somebody who is in his or her 40s, but someone who's already entered into his or her 50s, too late. You don't change the rules of the game that late.
So sort of kind of expanding the time horizon makes these strategies possible?
Well, expanding it in the sense of changing the promises to younger individuals rather than to older individuals.
So an interesting kind of scientific pop culture figure for our generation is Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's an astrophysicist with NASA who has backed a plan to double NASA's budget. But in recent decades, NASA has received ever-decreasing federal portions of the budget. He says that increasing NASA's budget will drive innovation and drive technology, which will ultimately yield greater output for the country. Is it fair or ethical to cut from a budget such as NASA's space budget in an effort to maintain, say, federal defense spending or pension budget spending?
To the extent that we've got to modify federal spending, we need to think real hard where should that cutback be happening. Now, partly the long-term promises need to be cut back, partly other pieces of the budget need to be cut back, but we want to be real careful when we're talking about things that involve investment in people, investment in helping technology, investment in improved infrastructure, whether it's roads or schools or hospitals or air traffic control systems. These are all real investments for the future, and maybe we need to do a little trimming, but we want to be real careful about not cutting back so much on things that are really true investments. I'm a believer that, most of farm subsidies could be cut substantially back. We need to do a better job on things, not only crop insurance, but flood insurance for homeowners. It's subsidized. Through the tax system, we subsidize housing way too much. Overall, our tax system at the federal level and spending system at the federal level, at state and local levels, we subsidize housing way too much. So there are places to cut back that would involve a lot less of the social investment, the technology investment, investing in our future, of which the NASA story, I don't know enough about the NASA story to evaluate the specific claims. Historically, there have been valuable spin-offs from NASA. Would that be true going forward? I don't know enough, but I do know there are socially worthwhile investments that the federal budget does help support, and we want to be real careful in thinking about cutbacks in those areas.
Well, Professor White, thank you so much for speaking with us today. We think this is a very important issue, and we're glad that you were able to shed some light on it for our generation. So we appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.